India's Living Legend, Series 2. The film is dedicated to a living legend, Miss Minu Jindal. Managing Director, Jindal Saw Limited, accessibility pioneer, who worked to make World Heritage Sites accessible to all, aiding conservation and popularization. The only differently abled business leader in the world to feature in the Fortune 500 list. Buddhism, one of the largest living religion in the world, is well spread across Asia. The message of Buddha still being the most important lesson to humanity. But did you know, for thousands of years, the world was unaware that Buddha was an Indian, that Ashoka was an Indian. It took many decades for the Archaeological Survey of India to explore and excavate buried structures from the womb of the earth. What about ancient Nalanda and its students that led to the discovery of this great university? Invaded and destroyed many times, yet showing the path for millions who follow Buddhism. This is the story of Nalanda, the oldest educational university in the history of the world. Nalanda, the light of Asia. The antiquity of Nalanda goes back to 8th century BC. Mahavira, the 24th Tirthankara, spent 14 years of his life in and around Rajgir and Nalanda. Buddha used to regularly halt here during his journey from Rajgir to Patliputra and back. According to Samyutta Nikaya, Nalanda was the birth and death place of Sariputra, the most important disciple of Buddha. Later, Buddhist pilgrims, including Ashoka, came here to worship at the stupa of Sariputra in Nalanda.
Lord Buddha and the great Nalanda University completely revolutionized the whole early political, educational, social and religious life of the country. Because earlier, education was the exclusive privilege of the higher class, that is the twin-born people. Rigveda says, Brahmasyo Mukhamasit Bahu Rajanya Krite. So only they were given the educational privileges in the country. Shudra Makshara Samyukta Durada Parivarjye. The literate Shudra, he should be kept away from the whole people. That was the prescription of our scriptures. Our Nalanda University for the first time threw open its doors for all kinds of people, irrespective of their caste, creed and breed. And what was the impact of this kind of opening the university open to all kinds of people? For the first time, it unleashed the pent-up energy of the marginalized people.
The university town of Nalanda was so majestic with its 4-storied monasteries, 9-storied libraries, sky-piercing temples, that those who came to the portals of this center of learning went back impressed by its magnificent architecture. Huinsang, the celebrated Chinese traveler, who was both a student and a teacher in Nalanda, records the richly adorned towers, fairy-like turrets, multi-storied courts, and roof covered with tiles that reflect light in 1,000 shades. Nalanda, the celebrated international Buddhist university in the 7th century, could boast of 10,000 students and more than 1,500 teachers.
One of the most striking features of this university, the life and blood of this university, was its vast and very rich library known as Dharma Ganja. Most of the books from Sanskrit, it was immediately translated into Korean, into Japanese, into Chinese, Southeast Asian and Central Asian languages.
Its vast syllabus consisted of subjects such as Sabda Vidya, grammar, Chikitsa Vidya, medicine, Hetu Vidya, logic, Silpa Vidya, fine arts. Adhyatma Vidya, philosophy. And languages like Sanskrit, Pali, Prakrit, Kharoshti, Tibetan, Mongolian and Chinese. About the daily classes, what Huinsang says is revealing. 100 lecture classes were arranged daily. The day is not sufficient for asking and answering of profound questions. From morning till night, they engage in discussion.
Huinsang himself traveled almost 16,000 kilometers for coming and going back, and the main reason was for taking books from India and most authoritative books on Indian Buddhism.
The Translation Bureau at White Horse Monastery in Loyang in China was headed by a combined group of scholars from Nalanda and China. Admissions were strictly on the basis of merit and at their performance at the gate. With the Dwara Pandit, the name and fame of Nalanda had reached such height that Balaputra Deva, the Sailendra king of Sumatra, gifted villages to Nalanda for copying of the manuscripts and upkeep of the Mahavihara.
Nalanda was a full-fledged, flourishing international university 500 years before the Bologna University in Italy, Sorbonne University in Paris, Oxford and Cambridge universities in England.
Slowly but steadily, Buddhism was losing its ground. The attack by Huns in 5th century dealt a fatal blow to it. Nalanda was reduced to a phantom of its former glory. In one of those days, Bakhtiyar Khilji, with a band of 200 soldiers, attacked it, looted and killed the unarmed students and teachers. About the mayhem and murders, Minhaj-us-Siraj, a near-contemporary historian, writes, "Great plunder fell into the hands of the victor. Most of the inhabitants of the place were Brahmins with shaven heads. They were put to death. Large number of books were found there, and when Mohammedans saw them, they called for some persons to explain the contents. But all of the men had been killed. It was discovered that the whole fort and city was a place of study, that is madarsa in Hindi language." Without knowing the tragic fate of the university, foreign students, still lured by the magic name of Nalanda, trickled in. Dharmaswami, a Tibetan student who came to Nalanda in 1234, was one such foreign student. Nalanda now had only 70 students and 4 teachers on its rolls, including Rahula Sribhadra, the 90-year-old abbot. When all the teachers and students decided to run away, Rahula refused to and yearned for his blissful nirvana moment at the hands of the armymen. When Swami pleaded with tears in his eyes and implored in the name of Buddha, Acharya agreed at the last moment. A jubilant Swami carried the Acharya, unable to move, and few manuscripts on his shoulders, to the safety of Gyananath temple. Thus, the last teacher and student of Nalanda returned to their ruined cell.
The whole Nalanda University was turned into ruins. People had completely forgotten about the whole thing. The word Nalanda itself was forgotten, and people came to know it as Badgaon, that is a huge village.
In the meanwhile, a group of shepherds who had no houses in the village thought it convenient to occupy it, as it offered them an elevated place to control their cattle folk.
The whole Buddhism itself was completely wiped out from India. It was not a living religion in India, but at the same time, it was a living religion in Bhutan, in Tibet, in China, and the Southeast Asian and Central Asian countries also. So we had forgotten that Buddha himself was an Indian.
Francis Buchanan Hamilton, the British surveyor, was the first to notice these buried structures, especially the conical mounds and courtyards, but mistook them as the palace of some ancient kings who ruled the area.
But it was in 1861, Alexander Cunningham, when he explored and excavated the place, he got two inscriptions in which there was a reference about the great Nalanda University, and that was the eureka moment of the identification of the great Nalanda.
After painstaking excavation for years, it was known that all these conical mounds were temples of the earlier periods. Some of these temples were as big as Bodh Gaya temple, rising to a height of 200 feet, adds Huinsang.
A continuous excavation started from 1915 up to 1935. As a result of the meticulous exploration and excavation by Archaeological Survey of India, the skeletons of one of the greatest university has been excavated. And this is the biggest ever excavated university in the history of India.
All that came out from the womb of the earth due to the untiring work of the archaeologists, matched fully with the descriptions given by Huinsang and Itzing. It is unbelievable to imagine that from such decayed, deserted and forlorn mounds of the remote village has this lofty and magnificent university town being excavated. Even after the concerted efforts of 160 years, only 70% of the university has been exposed. Sadly, the rest 30% and perhaps much more than that is still hidden under a number of houses in the adjacent village. Isn't it the solemn duty of various government and non-governmental agencies to strive together to acquire and excavate the rest hidden treasures of Nalanda, to bring back the lost glory of the university? Any delay will result in the permanent loss of the precious heritage of the country. Fondly we do hope and fervently we do pray. Let us all join hands for this noble cause.